So now that we've used the funding component to introduce how the 4,000 HSA base plan would look with that employer funding of the HSA, we can go ahead and minimize that plan group by clicking on the blue bar, but we're going to take it out of combined enrollment first. Now, the other piece of funding that we work with in Dynamis is going to be HRAs. And in this case study, the employer wanted to introduce the discussion of how the HRA could be used as a different way to help offset the higher deductible of the HSA plan. So again, the idea is we're using the same medical plan but creating another scenario. So to start with, we're going to make a copy of our plan group. So again, I come to my plan group options, and I'm going to come down to copy. And I get another copy of that plan group. And again, get in the habit of going in and renaming your plan group and changing the name and identifying it with what we're trying to illustrate in that plan group. So for this plan group, we'll go ahead and say 4,000 HSA base with HRA. All right, again, describing what we're going to be illustrating in this plan group. All right, so now that we're into the HSA plan, notice we still have our HSA funding because that comes along when we copy the plan design or the plan group. So now we're going to click on funding again, but this time we're going to choose deductible HRA. So to configure a deductible HRA, it's going to start off by asking you from and to. In other words, from where in the deductible do we want to start reimbursing and to where do we want to stop? So in this case, we're going to take a look at making this $4,000 deductible a $3,000 deductible through the use of the HRA. So I'm going to put in from 3,000 and then we're going to go to 4,000. And when we click add, we're able to get to the HRA configuration screen. So notice already in the coverage diagram how it's starting to build out where that HRA is going to occur in that deductible. And you'll notice that we build around employee only. So as a shortcut, we build out our HRA using the single deductible. And the system is going to determine how many deductibles each enrollment type has when it calculates our liability. In other words, it knows that all of the family enrollment types have potentially 2 deductibles. So it's automatically going to extend that HRA benefit to families. So there's 3 controls of our HRA. The first is going to be the from and to amount, which we've already set. The next one is reimbursement percentage. So reimbursement percentage is really saying of this range, what percentage of that range do we want to reimburse? So for instance, if I put 50% in, notice the vertical scale, and we can see that at this point in the deductible, the employee is going to be responsible for 50% and the HRA is reimbursing 50%. We could go to 80% if we were trying to replicate coinsurance using the HRA. Now in our case, we wanted to make it feel like a true $3,000 deductible, so I'm going to slide that right to 1,000. And again, notice the visual components, how when we get into more complex plan designs, that coverage diagram really helps identify how these external funding components wrap around that medical plan. Notice also our net out-of-pocket cost is automatically increasing or decreasing as we make changes to the HRA. So we can see ahead of time what the impact of the employee is in terms of their net out-of-pocket as we're making these changes. Now, the last number we have to work with is budgeted utilization percentage. And if you look under the table, you'll see 2 numbers here, budgeted liability and max liability. Well, the max liability is really a function of the enrollment counts and the range and the start and end point. And once we've got our maximum liability, now we can get to what we want to use for our budgeted utilization. So in this case, they decided to budget around 40% utilization. Notice when we set our budgeted utilization, our budgeted liability is now 40% of the max. And the key is that the budgeted liability is what's being added to the cost of the plan design. So if I click on that plan design cost again, now we're able to see that the HSA funding and the HRA liability is being added to the premium share to get us to our employer cost. All right, and we can actually make those adjustments here and immediately see that real-time impact on how different utilizations will impact the overall employer cost. So let's go ahead and set it back to our 40%. And you can use the slider. Sometimes it's easier just to click on it and type that amount right in. And then we're going to go ahead and go back to our plan design. All right, so notice now with adding the HRA, again, we're able to see that benefit in the coverage diagram. And if I hover over it, I can see my budgeted utilization and what that benefit dollar amount is. Notice our net out of pocket has been updated to take into consideration the added benefit of the HRA. So now while we have a $4,000 deductible and max out of pocket for singles, if we take into consideration the potential $500 in HSA dollars and the potential $1,000 HRA benefit, really their net out of pocket maximum is now $2,500 for single, $5,000 for family. Again, if I go into combined enrollment, we can see while that plan had been at budget, the addition of the HRA now pushing up the cost of that plan design. And again, it comes back to advantages when we have a budget target to work at and we know what the employer cost needs to be. I can come in here and solve the budget. So now, even though we have multiple funding vehicles, we're still able to, in one click, recalibrate where the contributions need to be, taking into consideration the funding on this plan, and still make sure that independently, if everybody takes this plan design option, we still meet our budget target. So again, the idea now that proposed options are more than just medical benefits. We've got proposed options that are using different combinations of premium share, different combinations of funding, all using similar medical plans. So again, that expanded definition of a proposed option. All right, we're going to come out of combined enrollment now. And in the next tutorial, we'll talk about what it looks like to come in and make changes to that HRA benefit.